Okay, welcome to part 2 of the short story study guide for your last test for the year. Picking up again with There Will Come Soft Rains. In the short story, we left off with setting. Setting of the story is there's two different parts to the setting because the place is the setting, Allendale, California. The house obviously is part of that setting. And then the year, a lot of you included this as part of the setting, which is good because the year that the story takes place in is also part of the setting. So August 4th, 2026 is the date that the house announces is the date currently when the action of the story happens. Okay, so that's the full setting of the story. Okay, conflict, or the plot. This is what you would have listed for plot. A lot of you didn't provide a lot of plot details. Some of you were very short with your description of the plot, which is why some of you lost points on your worksheet. Okay, so the conflict of the story, a mechanical house continues to operate in the absence of humans. The house goes through all the processes that it would have when the people who lived there were still alive. The house catches fire after a tree falls on it. It continues to operate as much as it is able to after that, to the point that all that is left is the voice. So at a certain point in the story, the house does catch fire. That is part of the conflict. But the fact that it's just continuing to go through all of the motions as though there were still people there, that's the kind of the major conflict of the story. The fire happens, pretty much the entire house burns to the ground except for one wall, and at the end of the story we still have this voice announcing the date. What's the theme of the story? Some of you said to beware of technology. I don't know that technology is really like a huge cautionary thing in this story, because it's not that the humans, well, I mean, I guess you could kind of make the argument that technology caused the nuclear war to happen and that sort of thing. So you could make that argument, but I think the story more strongly has the message that nature doesn't need humanity in order to continue to exist. So everything around the house is continuing to thrive. The fire, which is part of nature, burns the house to the ground. The house is not going to be able to continue. And the poem that the house recites at a certain point points to that theme because it talks about how basically the natural world doesn't need humans. It's kind of a bleak picture. And Bradbury doesn't necessarily pull any punches there with saying this is like what he thinks is that nature would be just fine without us, is kind of the idea. How does the story end? Well, it ends with the mechanical voice still announcing the date and time, even though everything else is gone. So that is the final note in the story there. Okay, so there's two more short stories that you didn't have to fill out a worksheet for, but if you haven't read them, you should read them. I posted PDFs of both of them on the English page. The first one that's posted is Harrisonburg Run. We'll talk about that one last. The other one is All Summer in a Day, written again by the same author that wrote There Will Come Soft Rains, Ray Bradbury, but also sort of a science fiction, futuristic sort of story. So who are the characters in the story? Well, we have Margot. She's the little girl. Her parents are also characters in the story, so you could say that they were also characters. You could add that there. The teacher of the class is a character, and then the other students in the class. The only one that's named is William. The other ones are there, but they aren't named specifically. Okay. What's the setting of the story? This story takes place on the planet Venus. The idea is that humans have been able to figure out space travel, and there's a colony of human beings living on the planet Venus. No year is specified necessarily. The conflict, Margot's locked in a closet of the school during the one day of the year that the sun shines on Venus. Venus is described as being a planet where it rains all the time. And so the title of the story, All Summer in a Day, there's only one day for every single period of 7 years on Venus that there's a sunny day on Venus. And they all go outside and they get to spend time and see the sun. Now, most of these kids in Margot's class have never experienced the sun. They've never been outside. Margot is a fairly new student to the class. We get the information in the story that she came from the planet Earth, and her parents brought her to Venus, but that she does remember planet Earth, and she remembers the sun. She's telling the other students what it's like. There's a little bit of jealousy there on the part of the other students. They tell her she's stupid, they tell her they don't believe her, and they lock her in the closet. This is a conflict, obviously, because then Margot misses out on the one day when the sun shines. She's already a little bit depressed because she's on Venus where it's always raining, and she doesn't get to be on Earth and experience the sun. But the fact that they lock her into the closet means that she's going to have to wait another 7 years of her life if she and her parents stay on Venus before she's able to see the sun again, which is extremely cruel. The theme, you can kind of boil this one down to the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. The children are really thoughtless and cruel to Margot, and they made her miss the one Sunday. So just the cruelty is a huge theme in the story. The horrible things we do to each other. And the children realize, but not until the very end of the story, how serious what they did is, because the story ends on them going to find her, which has a really sinister tone in the story, because you can just picture how devastated this little girl would be having missed the sun. And all of her classmates got to experience it. And they know she's not lying anymore. And they know how wonderful, like, sunshine is and being outside. And now they all have to just experience this rain again that Venus constantly has. Okay, inciting incident and climax for All Summer in a Day. Inciting incident is when Margot and her parents move to Venus. That's the inciting incident, because if they don't move there, then Margot's not part of this situation. She's not able to, like, give her stories about seeing the sun, and so her parents moving her to Venus is the inciting incident. It doesn't happen as part of the story. It happens before the story, but it's talked about in the story. The climax of the story then is when she's locked in the closet, because we know that that's the moment where her stories about life not on the planet Venus have taken her because of the jealousy of the other students. And then that creates the sort of the final conflict in the situation with her not being able to experience the sun. Okay, kind of a sad story. It's a very sad story. Okay, the last story, Harrison Bergeron. I also like this one a lot. Not by the same author. This one's by an author called Kurt Vonnegut, who wrote a lot of interesting modern fiction that you should probably wait till you're older to read. But this short story is a very interesting one. The characters in the story are Harrison Bergeron, who's the 14-year-old boy and child of Hazel and George, who are the first characters we meet in the story. They're a married couple who are sitting around watching television and talking about their 14-year-old son who's been taken by the government. Other characters, we have Diana Moon Glampers, who is the head of this government that these characters are under. We have some ballerinas in the story, that one of whom dances with Harrison. And we have the HG men. The HG stands for Handicapper General. That's what Diana Moon Glampers is. She's the Handicapper General. This is a society where people are forced to be equal. They all are given, if they have any special talents or abilities or anything that makes them better than anyone else, they're given a handicap to make them equal to the rest of society. So that's kind of the basis of this story. What's the setting of the story? We don't have a specific location like we do with There Will Come Soft Rains, but we are told that it is in the United States, and it's in the year 2081. So again, this is another author who's writing in the, I don't know exactly what year this story was written in, but it was written probably in the 70s or 60s. I'd have to look up the copyright year on this one. But I know it was written a while ago, and it was written about the future, which is still the future for us. 2081 is a ways off. And so this is a futuristic story as well. All right, conflict in this story, I've kind of explained it a little bit. Everyone's given a handicap so that they're equal. So some people are hurt or burdened because of their natural talents. For example, George is very smart, but every time he has a intelligent thought, he's given a horrible, like, sound that makes him unable to think. And so that's a handicap that smart people would have. People that are physically talented or like athletic are given weights that they have to wear. So anything that would make them better than another person, they're given some kind of handicap. If they're very beautiful, Harrison is described as having to wear a red rubber nose to make him look ridiculous because he's very attractive. So anything that would be something that would give you an edge over someone else in this particular society is done so that they can make everyone equal. That's forced. It's sort of a forced equality. But in the course of the story, Harrison has already been taken in by the authorities, by the handicapper general, because he resisted having his handicaps. So he was taken off to jail. He tries to escape from his handicaps, takes them all off. He's on the run for part of the story. He is rebelling against the handicaps that he's been given. And so in a period of the story, he has all of his handicaps removed, and he dances with a beautiful ballerina, and their dance is beautiful and perfect and wonderful, and he's killed. So the handicapper general's men, the HG men, come in, they shoot him, because this sort of defiance is not acceptable and undermines their society. So it's also a fairly sad story, but I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit different. The theme of the story is that the idea of everyone being equal doesn't really work well. You can see how all of the different handicaps that are given to people are really ridiculous, and that perfect equality would cause problems in a society. So trying to achieve this level of everyone being the same is really unworkable. It does not actually work in a society, and it causes problems, and it causes people to want to rebel like Harrison does. So this perfect equality really causes problems, or the attempt at perfect equality causes the problems. And then lastly, what point of view is this story told from? It's told from the third person point of view. So all 4 stories are third person. There's no first person stories amongst the 4 that we read. And so that will wrap up our short story unit for the year. I'm going to go ahead and post a copy of the document that I'm going through in this video. And so you'll have a paper, you'll be able to read the answers just like I did along with you here and explain things. And then your test, I'm going to post, I'm thinking I was going to wait until Thursday, but I might go ahead and do it, post it earlier than that, maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. And that way, that will be the very last assignment you have for this class. So really the last thing that I need you guys to do is, if you haven't turned in anything previously to your final test, if there's something that you're missing or is late, that can still be turned in. If your AR points are not completed, I did put those in on Friday. If you have 50 points out of 50 points, that's 100% for this quarter. I didn't do it out of 100. I made the point value lower for the AR points, and you also only have to get 15 points in order to have that 50. So if you have less than 15 points read for AR, then that's reflected in your grade right now. But you have until May 18th to get that completed. So make sure that you get your AR points done. If you're missing anything else and you need to turn something in, you can email it to me. You can send it to me through a message. You can turn it in on PowerSchool. Whatever works best for you, that'll be the last thing that we have to do. So your journal, your very last journal is due today, May 11th. And you should get that completed if you haven't already. And then the very last thing, as long as you have everything else completed, the very last thing that you'll have to do for English class is to take your test this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the short stories. It's a lot more fun when we can go through them together. I may try to schedule a Zoom this week. I haven't decided yet. We'll see, as a last wrap-up sort of thing for the school year. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, send me a message, post on the questions discussion on the page, and just let me know what you need from me. Have a great summer, and I hope that very much so that we'll be able to see each other in the fall, praying that that will be able to happen. So have a great summer. Enjoy your time. Hopefully this whole coronavirus thing will get under control and we won't have to be apart in the fall as well. Okay, thanks very much for watching, and have a great year.